He was a guy who was kind of known as a guy who fell apart.
A quitter a little bit, yeah.
Cowboy trying to finish up the lights. It's all over, and it's all over.
And he just turned a corner. Fuckers in the sport.
I will never speak the way that I have spoken about Charles Oliveira again. I was wrong. I did not know he was that good. I had reason to.
And point it at the center of the octagon and put Justin Gaethje away. It's one of the most special performances I've ever seen in my life.
All I gotta say, I'm him. I'm him, guys.
Bunch of great wins, but here you're going to fight this bigger guy, and all these people are writing you off. All these people are saying that it did. And you're tuning him up. And you did have to overcome getting knocked down, and you did have adversity. You had to deal with that leg. And then for you to stand, winning 4 rounds to 1 in the middle of the octagon and point at the ground with 10 seconds left, and then to knock him out with 1 second left. The way I jumped up, I've never done that before. Even when Leon Edwards knocked out Bruce.
Charles Oliveira didn't just beat Max Holloway. He gave him one of the hardest stylistic problems of his career and kept forcing him to solve the same puzzle over and over again until there was no time left. That's really the story of this fight. A lot of people came out of it disappointed because they wanted chaos. They wanted the kind of BMF fight where both guys stand in the middle, trade combinations, and leave with swollen faces. Instead, what they got was a highly disciplined performance from Oliveira, and because it wasn't built around non-stop wild exchanges, a lot of fans immediately dismissed it as boring. I honestly think that misses the point. Because on a technical level, what Charles did here was ridiculously impressive. He didn't just edge Max out. He controlled him, neutralized his best habits, and dragged one of the most experienced 5-round fighters in the sport into a kind of fight we almost never see Max forced to fight. And that's what stood out the most to me. Coming into this fight, one of the biggest questions was cardio. Max Holloway has a long history of carrying pace deep into fights. We've seen him go 5 rounds plenty of times, and even late in fights, he usually looks fresh enough to keep his output going. Oliveira, on the other hand, has had explosive moments in 5-round fights, but he isn't usually the guy people describe as a slow-burn marathon fighter. So as the fight started playing out the way it did, I kept thinking the same thing. If Charles keeps squeezing on these body locks, keeps forcing clinches, keeps chasing back takes and rear naked chokes, is that eventually going to drain him more than it drains Max? But it didn't. If anything, the opposite happened. Max was the one who started to look worn down. Max was the one who began losing sharpness. And I think that surprised a lot of people because we're so used to seeing him as the guy who weaponizes pace. But there's a difference between having 5-round striking cardio and spending round after round defending takedowns, carrying someone's weight, fighting grips, peeling hands, and constantly having to survive bad positions. That kind of fight empties your tank differently. From the very beginning, Oliveira made it clear he was not going to give Max the kind of fight Max wanted. He opened with heavy leg kicks, and those weren't just there to score. They were there to disrupt rhythm, force reactions, and make Holloway think twice about his usual movement. Max likes to work off that constant lateral motion, touching with the jab, adjusting angles, and building combinations from there. Charles attacked the base early and made that movement more expensive. At first, Max had some success with his jab and his exits. He was doing what he usually does well, touching, shifting, moving left, and trying to keep Oliveira from setting his feet. There were good moments where he made quick adjustments, especially when he started mixing the jab with the right hand a little more cleanly. But the problem was that every time he gave Charles a chance to close distance, Charles immediately turned it into a grappling exchange. That was the real difference. It wasn't just that Oliveira could get takedowns. It was how easily he forced the positions he wanted once he got his hands connected. That body lock was a huge weapon all night. Once he got Max wrapped up, everything changed. It stopped looking like a competitive clinch and started looking like a strength and control issue. Max tried to frame, tried to stay upright, tried to create enough space to break away, but Oliveira kept locking his hands, lifting, tripping, and dragging him down anyway. And once the fight hit the mat, the gap became even more obvious. What stood out to me wasn't just that Charles was getting takedowns. It was how quickly he was converting one position into the next. Side control, back takes, hooks in, body triangle, submission attempts, hand fighting, elbows, back to the choke again. Max was defending, and to his credit, he defended really well in a lot of dangerous moments, but he was always reacting. He was never actually getting ahead of the sequence. That's a bad place to live against someone like Oliveira. The first round told you a lot. After the early striking exchanges, Charles got the clinch, got the takedown, and from there, the whole tone of the fight changed. Max gave up the back in a transition that Oliveira read immediately, and once Charles settled in behind him, the round became all about survival. Max did a good job fighting hands and staying calm under pressure, but he spent a huge portion of that round carrying the most dangerous submission finisher in UFC history on his back. And that matters, because even when the choke isn't fully there, the threat changes everything. Oliveira kept switching sides, changing grips, threatening the rear naked choke, threatening the face crank, softening Max up with short shots, then coming back to the neck again. A lot of viewers see those moments and think, he's just holding position. He wasn't. He was working. He was forcing defensive decisions, breaking posture, and trying to open the smallest window possible. Max just did a very tough, very experienced job surviving. Round 2 felt like confirmation. Oliveira went back to the body, kept using pressure to back Max up. And once he got another takedown, he again made Holloway deal with a kind of physicality that he just never seemed comfortable with. Usually when Max gets taken down, there's a sequence where he starts building back to the fence, wall walking, finding underhooks, and creating a path back up. Against Oliveira, that usual escape route never really got going. Every time he tried to build, Charles pinned him, flattened him, or climbed to the next position. It made Holloway look stuck in a way we rarely see. And I think that's why this performance matters so much for Oliveira's legacy. It's not just that he beat Max, it's that he beat a version of Max Holloway who is historically difficult to make look helpless. Holloway is durable, experienced, smart, and usually very hard to control for extended periods. Oliveira didn't just survive against him or steal moments. He imposed his style over and over again. Even when the stream issues interrupted part of the third round, the broader pattern didn't really change. By the time we were fully back into the fight, Oliveira was again on top and again forcing Max to work from underneath. There was also that nice striking moment earlier in the sequence where Charles set up the knee as Max ducked into range. It's a good example of how, even in the stand-up, Oliveira was making Max hesitate. He wasn't just a takedown threat, he was landing meaningful shots too. That's another thing that gets lost when people reduce this fight to grappling equals boring. Charles wasn't helpless on the feet. He landed hard leg kicks, found right hands, pressured Max backward, and used his striking to push Holloway into bad decisions. The grappling was the headline, but it was set up by pressure and danger everywhere. By the championship rounds, you could see the effect of all that control on Max. His movement didn't look as free. The snap on his punches wasn't the same. The reactions were just a little slower. And Oliveira, for a guy many people worried would fade, looked strong. He kept coming. He kept forcing tie-ups. He kept making Max defend. That fourth round especially felt like the point where Holloway's options had really narrowed. He was still trying, still fighting, still showing the same toughness he always shows, but the fight no longer looked like something he could turn with volume alone. Charles was too physical, too composed, and too aware of where the openings were. And then in the fifth, even when Max finally had a few better moments and got on top briefly, Oliveira still found a way to recover, get back to his own game, and finish the fight in control. That tells you a lot. When a fighter has dominated you for most of the night and still has enough left to reverse late and close strong, that's not an accident. That's a real performance. Now, does all of that mean people have to call it an instant classic? No. I understand why some fans came away wanting more chaos. But if the complaint is that Oliveira didn't stand there and deliberately ignore his best skill set just to create a more fan-friendly fight, that's not really a criticism of him. That's a criticism of the expectations people attach to this type of matchup. Oliveira is a grappler first. A dangerous striker too, yes, but a grappler first. If he sees a clear path to dominate a fight by taking someone down, controlling them, and hunting submissions, he would be stupid not to use it. This wasn't some side option he discovered halfway through. This was the clearest path to victory from the beginning, and he took it. And what that says about his legacy is huge. He's now stacked another elite name onto a resume that already had serious weight. He has wins over top fighters, he has one of the best submission records in UFC history, and now he has a performance against Max Holloway that, while not the most entertaining to every viewer, was extremely high level and incredibly effective. That matters. Because eventually, when you start talking about where a fighter belongs historically, you can't only count the fan-friendly wars. You also have to count the nights where they completely solved a difficult opponent. Charles Oliveira didn't just win. He showed levels. He showed how dangerous his grappling still is, how physically overwhelming he can be when he gets his hands locked, and how difficult he is to survive once he gets momentum going. Max Holloway deserves credit for surviving as much as he did. But this fight belonged to Charles from a technical and physical standpoint for most of the night. It may not be the fight people expected, but it absolutely deserves more respect than it's getting.